Our story begins on a peaceful afternoon in Menlo Park, California, where the gentle golden sunlight filtered through the cool green trees of the Meta campus. Mark Zuckerberg, the tech mogul behind the Meta empire, renowned worldwide for his brilliant mind and tightly scheduled days, also finds moments of ordinary life amid the whirlwind of work. Although he is a symbol of modern technology, the visionary who turned wild ideas like a global social network and the metaverse into reality, Mark still cherishes the simple moments, a delicious lunch, a fragrant cup of coffee, or even just a few minutes standing under a tree watching people go by. Meta Campus, with its uniquely designed buildings, gleaming glass walls, and open workspaces filled with natural light, forms a harmonious world where everything seems to operate in perfect sync. Mark lives by a strict schedule, morning strategic meetings with investors, afternoon brainstorming sessions with his team of engineers about new features for the metaverse, and occasionally late-night calls with partners in Asia or Europe. Yet no matter how busy he is, he never misses lunch. That day, around 11 a.m., the familiar chime of Meta Campus's internal ordering system rang out, a small sound that nonetheless caught the attention of everyone at the on-campus restaurant, TechByte. On the large screen mounted at the reception desk, Mark Zuckerberg's name appeared clearly along with a special order, a premium burger with a soft, golden brown bun, perfectly cooked fresh beef sourced from a local farm, a plate of organic salad tossed with crisp greens and drizzled with homemade balsamic dressing, and a glass of detox juice blended from rare fruits such as navel oranges, Costa Rican pineapple, and a touch of plump red pomegranate. Although this wasn't the first time Mark had ordered from TechByte, his orders always carried a certain special flair, almost like a subtle challenge sent to the restaurant's team. TechByte isn't your typical corner restaurant. Located right in the heart of Meta Campus, it symbolizes a fusion of traditional American cuisine and modern style, where classic burgers are elevated with premium ingredients and salad plates resemble paintings, crafted by a meticulous artist. The culinary team here works with burning passion, treating every dish not merely as food, but as a work of art, a memorable experience for anyone who walks through the door. From handpicking the freshest lettuce leaves to grilling beef with near-scientific precision, everything is executed with absolute dedication. In the bright kitchen of TechByte, the atmosphere suddenly became more lively and bustling when Mark's order appeared on the screen. Head chef Davis, a tall man with nearly a decade of experience and a neatly tied ponytail, looked at the screen displaying Mark Zuckerberg with eyes that mixed surprise and excitement. "Mark's order, huh?" he murmured in a deep, enthusiastic voice. Davis clapped his hands to signal, and the entire team immediately sprang into action. Carlos, a young line cook with lightning-fast hands, dashed off to fetch fresh beef from the refrigerator. Emma, the chef specializing in salads, began selecting each organic leaf from a batch delivered that very morning, while Davis himself stood at the grill, ensuring that the beef was cooked to perfection with marbling as flawless as a work of art. They all understood that no matter who the customer was, be it an ordinary employee or the meta boss himself, every dish had to meet the highest standards. But this order was different. It carried with it both special expectations and extraordinary pressure, like a test that the whole team was determined to ace. Outside the kitchen, at the reception desk, Mary, a young woman with a radiant smile and a professional demeanor, was double-checking the order details on the system. Mary had only been working at TechByte for 6 months, but she'd already heard countless stories about VIP orders from Meta's top brass. This time it was Mark Zuckerberg, the very man she'd only seen on screen during inspirational speeches or in photos on social media. The system clearly stated that the order was to be delivered at 12 or 15 p.m. at VIP table number 3. Mary glanced at the clock. There was still over an hour to go. She smiled to herself, thinking, he'll be as punctual as a clock as always. She meticulously rechecked the serving tray, wiped down every spoon, and stood ready at the counter, feeling both nervous and confident. Meanwhile, in another corner of Meta Campus, Mark was seated in a large glass-walled meeting room with his strategic team. Dressed in his familiar gray hoodie, he tapped away on his laptop, his eyes fixed on the latest Instagram revenue chart. Today's meeting was more relaxed than usual, just a progress update and a discussion of some new ideas for the metaverse. Priscilla, sitting beside him, quickly jotted notes on her iPad, occasionally glancing at her husband with a hint of concern. "Don't forget to eat lunch," she whispered during a brief pause in the meeting. Mark nodded and smiled lightly, replying, "I already ordered at TechByte. A premium burger, this is not to be missed." Priscilla shrugged, well aware that he could easily forget anything when he was so absorbed in work. Back at TechByte, when the clock struck noon, the kitchen transformed into a bustling stage. The burger, freshly grilled, exuded an intoxicating aroma that made Carlos rub his stomach and murmur, "I swear I could eat this right now." Emma's salad looked like a painting, with vibrant greens interspersed with hints of cherry tomato red, while Davis's glass of detox juice gleamed like a liquid gem, a brilliant orange with a touch of pomegranate red. Davis gave one final inspection, nodding in satisfaction. He placed the tray on the prep table and Mary carried it out to VIP table number 3, standing by with the confidence of a seasoned employee. She pictured Mark walking in, nodding his thanks before sitting down to enjoy his meal, perhaps even complimenting the juice, knowing it was his favorite. But 12 of the 15 came and went, and there was no sign of Mark. Mary began to feel anxious, glancing at the clock and then out the main door. A few regulars, meta engineers who usually had lunch here, sat nearby, starting to wonder aloud, "Where's Mark?" Jake, a young programmer, whispered to his colleague Sarah, guessing that Mark must be caught up in some important meeting. Sarah chuckled, but Mary didn't find it amusing. She tried to maintain a smile, yet inside, her initial excitement gradually gave way to worry. The burger was starting to cool, its melted cheese now looking a bit droopy, and the detox juice had lost some of its vibrant luster. Michael, the head of TechByte, stepped out from the management office with a grave expression. A middle-aged man with flecks of gray in his hair, he had been with TechByte since it was nothing more than a concept on paper by the Meta team. He took pride in the restaurant's reputation, a place that not only served food but also stood as a symbol of perfection within the campus. "Is something wrong, Mary?" he asked in a deep, worried tone. "This order is very important. If Mark doesn't show up, we'll lose face in the entire campus." Michael's anxiety wasn't just about TechByte. It was about Meta Campus, where everything from technology to meals had to run as smoothly as a Swiss watch. He glanced toward the door, then turned to Mary and said, "Call Priscilla and see what's happening." Back in the kitchen, Davis and his team continued to keep the food warm, but a sense of restlessness began to creep in. "How could the customer not receive his order?" Davis muttered, his eyes glancing at the burger, now half cool and looked with regret. They had poured their hearts into every detail, the beef sourced from a local Fresno farm, the organic vegetables grown without pesticides in Silicon Valley's orchards, and the handcrafted detox juice with a recipe that Davis refined week after week. Mary picked up the internal phone and called Priscilla with a glimmer of hope. After a few rings, Priscilla's tired voice came through, "Sorry, Mary. Mark has an urgent meeting that just came up. He won't be able to make it right now. Wait another 15 minutes and I'll update you." Mary turned to Michael, conveying the message with a hint of relief. At least he hasn't canceled completely. Michael nodded, though his eyes remained tense. Time passed slowly. By 12:30, TechByte was engulfed in a heavy atmosphere of anticipation. The restaurant lights still shimmered, yet they seemed to mirror the team's collective worry. Regulars began to murmur among themselves. Jake speculated that Mark was in a meeting with shareholders, while Sarah joked that he was testing teleportation from the office to the restaurant but had failed. Mary stood by the counter, her eyes fixed on the main door, hoping to catch a glimpse of the familiar figure in a gray hoodie. Then the phone rang again. Priscilla called once more, her voice even more exhausted. "The meeting is dragging on over a global strategy issue. Mark won't be able to come anytime soon." "Sorry, everyone." This news hit TechByte like a punch to the gut. Mary felt her heart sink, her hand dropping limply from the phone. Davis set down his knife, a look of disappointment on his face, as he eyed the now cold meal that had lost its freshness. Michael stepped out, shaking his head slowly. He returned to the management office and double-checked the ordering system, hoping to find some error to blame, but nothing was wrong. Everything was perfect, except for the absence of Mark. Just a few blocks away from TechByte in a sealed meeting room at Meta's headquarters, Mark was facing an unexpected crisis. A critical system error had just been discovered in the metaverse platform, a glitch that could derail the launch of this year's biggest product. The room was flooded with light from large screens, charts, and dense streams of numbers. The engineering team argued heatedly, every voice taut as a tightened string. In the midst of it all, Mark sat with rapid keystrokes on his laptop, his eyes glued to the screen as he desperately searched for a solution. Priscilla sat beside him, continuously taking notes, occasionally glancing at Mark with worry. "Are you all right?" she whispered. Mark nodded, but his mind was spinning with thousands of lines of code and strategies. Amid the storm of information, a thought suddenly flashed in Mark's mind. Lunch. He had forgotten all about the order at TechByte, the rare moment he set aside just for himself amid the whirlwind of work. He glanced at the clock, 12:45. A strange emptiness welled up inside him, not from hunger, but from the realization that he had missed something more important than any code or strategy. He remembered those lunchtimes at TechByte, laughing with the team over burgers or the detox juice that Davis always proudly presented. He recalled Mary's ever-present smile as she carried out the tray, and Michael's watchful gaze, filled with the pride of a father. Mark was startled, abruptly rising in the middle of the meeting and interrupting an engineer who was presenting. "Everyone, take a 10-minute break. I need to step out." The team looked on in surprise, a few even gaped, but no one dared to ask why. Mark quickly left the room and asked Priscilla, "Does TechByte still have my order?" Priscilla, taken aback, replied, "Probably not, Mark. They've been waiting." Mark sighed deeply, his voice heavy with regret, and told her to call them back and let them know he was on his way and to apologize on his behalf. At TechByte, Mary received a call from Priscilla. Her voice lit up as she announced, "He's actually coming." Davis, upon hearing the news, shouted, "Redo the burger, right now." The entire team burst into laughter and sprang back into action with renewed energy. Emma began tossing the salad again, Carlos started grilling the bun, and Davis returned to the grill, murmuring, "This time, I won't let it get cold, Mark." Michael stepped out with a hearty laugh, adding, "I knew it. Mark would never pass up good food." He just needed an excuse to get out of that meeting. 10 minutes later, Mark returned to TechByte in his familiar gray hoodie, panting from sprinting across 2 blocks. He nodded apologetically to the team. "I'm really sorry for keeping you all waiting. Work swept me away, but I couldn't let TechByte's burger go to waste." Mary laughed as she brought out the tray with relief. Davis stood behind the counter, folding his arms and joking, "Next time you're late, I'll charge you for the wait, even if you're the meta boss." Mark chuckled heartily, took a bite of his still hot burger, and nodded, "Worth the wait." "Thank you, everyone." Finally, the meal was enjoyed, albeit a bit late. TechByte exhaled a collective sigh of relief as the warm atmosphere returned, as if no tension had ever existed. The incident spread throughout Meta Campus as a humorous yet touching story, a reminder that even a tech tycoon needs to pause, have lunch, and appreciate those around him. For Mark, it was a small lesson amid the storm. Work can wait, but a good burger and the kindness of the TechByte team cannot.